Do you live in Japan? Do you live in Yamanashi, near Fuji Kawaguchiko and Otsuki, in Kofu, or anywhere across the Tokyo metropolitan area within reach of Mount Fuji? Do you have a climb to Japan's tallest mountain planned for next month when the official season opens? If the answer is yes, you need to watch this full video, because the ground beneath the foot of Mount Fuji just shook harder than it has in over a century. And right now, 2 tropical storms are dumping rain directly onto the hillsides that earthquake just weakened. On Friday night, June 26, 2026, at 10:29 p.m. local time, a magnitude 5.6 earthquake struck the Fuji Five Lakes area of Yamanashi Prefecture at a depth of approximately 20 kilometers. The epicenter sat in Fuji Kawaguchiko, a town just 30 kilometers from the summit of Mount Fuji itself. The Japan Meteorological Agency recorded the shaking at lower 6 on Japan's 7-point Shindo intensity scale in Fuji Kawaguchiko, a level at which it becomes difficult to remain standing, where unsecured furniture topples over and windows can shatter. According to the JMA, this is the strongest shaking Yamanashi Prefecture has recorded in more than 100 years, with the last comparable event dating back to 1924, when a large earthquake struck neighboring western Kanagawa Prefecture. Otsuki City recorded upper 5 on that same scale. Shaking reached parts of Shizuoka and Kanagawa prefectures at lower 5, and even the Tokyo metropolitan area, roughly 78 kilometers away, registered an intensity of 4. Light shaking felt across one of the most densely populated urban regions on Earth. This next part matters, because the people who felt this earthquake firsthand describe something distinct from ordinary shaking. An official with the Fuji Kawaguchiko town office described it as feeling like an upward-thrusting earthquake. A 64-year-old part-time employee at a local convenience store evacuated outside immediately, telling reporters the vertical shaking lasted more than 10 seconds, long enough that she found herself recalling the devastating 2011 earthquake that struck northeastern Japan, one of the most catastrophic disasters in the country's modern history. Snacks fell from the shelves around her as she made her way out. That single detail, an ordinary convenience store employee instinctively comparing a Friday night tremor to 2011, tells you everything about how this earthquake actually felt on the ground, even though the magnitude itself, 5.6, is objectively far smaller than that historic disaster. Here is why this is serious in concrete, immediate terms. 10 people were injured across the affected region, according to authorities reporting Saturday, with the injuries described as minor. A landslide occurred in the town of Nakai in neighboring Kanagawa Prefecture, prompting officials to begin urgent assessment of the area. A concrete wall collapsed in the city of Fujiyoshida in Yamanashi, though no injuries were reported from that specific incident. In the prefectural capital of Kofu, footage showed visible damage to at least one building, with authorities actively directing pedestrians around fallen debris in the streets. Sections of 4 separate expressways were closed in the immediate aftermath. Central Japan Railway suspended Tokaido Shinkansen service in both directions, between Toyohashi and Tokyo heading toward the capital, and between Tokyo and Nagoya heading outbound, stranding travelers on one of the busiest bullet train corridors in the world during the Friday evening rush. JR East suspended its own Shinkansen services as well, while also running emergency safety checks across its Tokaido, Joetsu, and Hokuriku lines. Service was not fully restored until well past midnight, with Central Japan Railway's lines resuming at 1:17 a.m., and JR East's network not fully back to normal operations until 1:08 a.m. the following morning. One more thing you need to know, and this is the detail that should concern anyone watching this story develop over the coming days. This earthquake did not strike a region with calm, dry weather. It struck in the middle of an already active tropical weather pattern. JR rail services across the region had already been experiencing delays and suspensions before the quake even hit, a direct consequence of 2 separate tropical systems, Tropical Storm Mekala and Tropical Storm Higos, both converging on central and eastern Japan at almost exactly the same time the ground started shaking. In the immediate hours after the earthquake, authorities in Yamanashi Prefecture explicitly warned residents to take extra care around damaged buildings and roads, citing poor weather and a lack of daylight as factors actively complicating their ability to make safety assessments. That warning proved prescient. By Saturday, June 27th, heavy rain and strong winds tied to Typhoon number 7, the same general system bringing Mekala and Higos through the region, had become the dominant transportation disruption across central Japan, surpassing even the earthquake's own impact, with disruptions hitting the Tokaido line, JR East's Chiba area network, airport access routes, and expressways simultaneously. This is where it becomes genuinely dangerous in a way that goes beyond any single earthquake or any single storm taken in isolation. In a joint notice issued after the quake, Yamanashi Prefecture and the Kofu Local Meteorological Office explicitly stated that the earthquake may have weakened the ground in both Fuji Kawaguchiko and Otsuki. As a direct result, officials temporarily lowered the threshold required to trigger landslide-related warnings in those areas, to 70% of normal levels in Fujikawa-Guchiko and 80% of normal levels in Otsuki. In plain language, that means it now takes meaningfully less rainfall than it normally would to trigger an official landslide warning in these communities, precisely because the ground itself has been physically destabilized by Friday night's shaking. And that lowered threshold arrived just as rain clouds from the lingering tropical system were already reaching Yamanashi by Sunday morning, June 28th, with forecasters expecting that rain to spread across the wider region through the morning hours. This is the exact compound hazard scenario that disaster planners across Japan dread most. An earthquake that cracks and loosens hillside soil, immediately followed by heavy rainfall that no longer needs to work nearly as hard to send that same soil sliding downhill. Most people are missing how unusual it is for an earthquake of this magnitude to register such extreme shaking intensity in this specific location. Takuya Nishimura, a professor at Kyoto University's Disaster Prevention Research Institute, explained that magnitude 6-class earthquakes occur roughly once every 10 years in this exact area, a region sitting near the convergence of multiple tectonic plates, including the Philippine Sea Plate. This earthquake, despite registering only 5, 6, a notch below that historically typical 6-class threshold, still managed to produce the strongest shaking intensity Yamanashi has recorded in over a century, a discrepancy that points directly to the earthquake's unusually shallow depth, just 20 kilometers, and its location almost directly beneath the affected towns. According to JMA officials, this was a reverse fault-type earthquake, with no connection whatsoever to volcanic activity at Mount Fuji itself. And that brings us to the question every single news outlet covering this earthquake immediately had to answer, given the epicenter's proximity to Japan's most iconic and most carefully watched volcano. The Japan Meteorological Agency stated unequivocally that there has been no change in observational data for Mount Fuji following the earthquake, and explicitly confirmed there is no threat of an immediate eruption. Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kahara echoed that assessment directly at a hastily arranged press conference, confirming no abnormalities had been reported in Mount Fuji's volcanic activity. Officials also confirmed no abnormalities were detected at Chubu Electric Power's Hamaoka nuclear power plant in neighboring Shizuoka Prefecture, nor at the radiation monitors situated near that facility. The timing of this reassurance carries particular weight, because this earthquake, struck just weeks before Mount Fuji's official climbing season, is set to open on the 3,776-meter mountain, a detail that has not escaped public attention, given how closely any seismic activity this close to the volcano tends to be scrutinized by climbers planning their summer ascents. Here's why this is serious for the days immediately ahead, regardless of Mount Fuji's confirmed stability. JMA has explicitly told residents across the affected region to remain cautious for about a week following the earthquake, with particular emphasis on the first 2 to 3 days, when strong aftershocks are statistically most likely to occur. According to the agency's own historical data, earthquakes of a similar scale have been followed by an even larger main shock in roughly 10 to 20% of comparable cases, a real, non-trivial probability that authorities are treating seriously, even as they reassure the public that a far larger event is far from guaranteed. As of midnight Friday, JMA had already recorded 2 additional tremors of intensity 1 or higher, including one reaching intensity 3, evidence that the fault remains active in the immediate aftermath. Now the focus shifts to what has happened across the broader region in just the 2 days since this earthquake struck, because Japan has not had a quiet weekend to recover from it. As Typhoon number 7's broader rain bands swept across the country, a stationary seasonal rain front combined with the approaching tropical system to dump torrential rain across the Kansai region on June 26th, the very same day as the Yamanashi earthquake, triggering landslides in Sika, Kyoto Prefecture, and flooding homes in Nara. Level 4 landslide warnings, Japan's second highest tier, were issued for Tokyo's Aizu Oshima Island and for parts of Shizuoka, Kanagawa, and Chiba prefectures, the same general region shaken by Friday's earthquake. More than 200 flights were canceled. A missing person was reported following a separate landslide in Yamaguchi Prefecture, hundreds of kilometers to the west, illustrating just how widespread this rain event has been across the entire country. And in a grim coincidence, playing out at the very same time, a separate, unrelated magnitude, 7. 2 earthquake struck off the coast of Iwate Prefecture in northern Japan on June 25th, one day before the Yamanashi quake, followed by yet another powerful earthquake off Iwate registering upper 6 intensity on June 28th itself, meaning Japan has now weathered major seismic activity in 2 entirely separate regions of the country within the same 72-hour window, all while fighting flooding and landslide risk from 2 tropical systems simultaneously. This is where it becomes dangerous to treat any one of these events in isolation. Sections of the Keno Expressway in Chiba Prefecture remained affected as of June 28th, after landslides were reported there on June 27th, with authorities warning that additional restrictions could still be imposed depending on how weather and ground conditions continue to evolve. Road operators across the region have continued urging drivers to check current conditions before setting out, specifically flagging areas where slopes have already loosened or where landslides have already occurred as the locations of greatest ongoing concern. This is precisely the layered, compounding hazard pattern that defines so many of the most dangerous disaster scenarios worldwide. Not one single catastrophic event, but a sequence of moderate, individually survivable events stacking directly on top of each other, each one slightly reducing the safety margin for whatever comes next. The historical comparison worth holding on to here is simple but important. The last time Yamanashi Prefecture experienced shaking at this intensity was 1924, a year before the prefecture had anything resembling its modern seismic monitoring infrastructure. That gap, more than 100 years, underscores just how genuinely rare an event of this specific local intensity actually is for this particular community, even though the broader region experiences magnitude 6 class earthquakes on a roughly decade-long cycle, according to Kyoto University's own seismologists. The fact that a magnitude 5.6 earthquake, technically smaller than that historical 6 class benchmark, was still capable of producing the strongest shaking the prefecture has felt in over a century speaks directly to how much local geology, depth, and epicenter placement can shape the real, felt experience of an earthquake far more than the magnitude number alone ever could. One more thing you need to know about how Japan's government responded in the immediate aftermath. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's office set up an emergency response center at the Crisis Management Center of the Prime Minister's office within hours of the quake, and Takaichi personally instructed officials to gather information and provide updates to the public as quickly as possible. That rapid institutional response, a hallmark of Japan's deeply practiced disaster preparedness systems, reflects decades of hard-won experience responding to exactly this kind of compound seismic and weather threat, even as residents on the ground describe a weekend defined by genuine uncertainty, watching rain clouds gather over hillsides that, just 2 days earlier, had been violently shaken for the first time in 100 years. The atmosphere across Yamanashi and the surrounding prefectures right now is one of cautious, weather-watching vigilance. The earthquake itself has passed. Mount Fuji remains, by every official measurement available, entirely unchanged and stable. But the secondary hazard, weakened hillside soil meeting an active tropical rain system, has not passed at all. It is, as of this morning, actively unfolding. Authorities have lowered their landslide warning thresholds specifically because they know how this combination plays out. And rain, from the lingering remnants of this tropical weather pattern, continues spreading across the very towns that felt the strongest shaking on Friday night. We will know more as JMA continues monitoring both the aftershock sequence and the incoming rainfall over the coming days. But right now, this needs to be taken seriously by anyone in Yamanashi, Otsuki, or the surrounding hillside communities. The earthquake has weakened the ground. The rain has not stopped. And for the next several days, the real danger in the shadow of Mount Fuji may not be another tremor at all, but what that tremor left behind, waiting for enough water to set it loose.